Hi folks, welcome to the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast by Gary Ryan from Organisations That Matter. In this podcast, Gary shares everything about servant leadership, service leadership, authentic leadership, how to create high performance cultures, service excellence and life balance. Here's your host, Gary Ryan.
Thank you, Sienna, for your lovely introduction. I'm very delighted today, folks, for this episode of the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast to have my very good friend, known him for decades now. Not that either of us look like we could have known someone for decades, because we both still look so young, of course. Gareth Kent, who is the Managing Director of PRP Geelong, Warrnambool and Mt Gambier. And he's been the director for 18 and a half years, folks, of this company. And he was only a young fella when he started it. So, Gareth, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Gary. Appreciate being here too. Yeah, and it's I suppose it's been a journey for you to watch as we've all got older.
Oh, Gareth, it's been a delightful journey to watch you since you were that young fella that came into the footy club in 1990, whatever it was.
1997, I think. Or 98.
Yeah, 98. That was a good season.
Yeah, it was.
But we might swing back to that stuff a little bit later. But let's just talk about PRP. And you know, you were a very young man when you started the business and bought into the business and have grown the business considerably. Do you mind for our audience just to tell them a little bit about what you do in PRP, Geelong, Warrnambool and Mt Gambier, and really how you got into owning this business?
Yeah, well, obviously I'm a property valuer by trade. So I'm a property valuer. It takes quite a journey to become a valuer. It's about 6 years to study and working and things like that. And I did most of that journey in the early days in Melbourne. And then I, pretty early in the piece, once I was fully qualified as a valuer, I worked out fairly quickly that I wanted to get and own my. In fact, I had a plan well in advance of that. Which you and I spoke about, and you were half an architect of, which helped me know where I wanted to get and get down here and set up my own business fairly early from when I was qualified. And so I did that in about 2008, I think, 2007, 2008. Came down and set up in Geelong, and I'd done by that stage. I'd done my valuation degree, a marketing and business degree. I'd done some time as engineering at Monash as well. So I spent a lot of time at university and enjoyed all the good times of university, and combined a lot of those experiences to work out that there was an opening in the market in Geelong. I went to a barbecue with some other old valuers that were retiring, including my dad, who was a valuer down here as well, and they were retiring, and basically said, well, who's doing the work? And they said, oh, just one firm. And my marketing brain kicked in from second or third year marketing, whatever it was, where there's one, there's always got to be two in the marketplace. So very quickly realised there was an opening and came down and set up shop here, firstly just under my own name, and then grew it to a point where we're able to join into the PRP franchise network, which you had to do. I mean, you have to appear bigger than you are, and you have to. There's also a whole lot of resources and extra stuff we get from being within a franchise group, in that we can provide. We get very, very extensive auditing, and we can reach out and grab hold of other people's experiences and get help and collaboration within projects. So that's helped me within that journey, being a young guy, starting out on my own in my own business, having the ability to tap into a franchise fairly early has helped me, grow my business and be guided by some of the older guys in the group, not just professionally in valuation, but in also how to build the business and how to grow the business and that sort of thing. And obviously, I've thrown my own little piece on top of that, which has grown it to what it is. But we certainly realised fairly early that there was an opportunity down here in Geelong, and it just needed to grab the bull by the horns and get down and have a crack, and get round and let everybody know you were there and get started. So I was a young guy, but I worked hard, and we built it up to what it is now. We've got the offices of Geelong, Warrnambool, Mt Gambier, so we have about quite a large slice of Victoria and into South Australia is in my franchise area, and we have about 38 staff through that region, so it's grown into quite a large business. We've been doing it for 18 years, so we're probably one of the most entrenched and consistent valuation firms in our staff. We have very low staff turnover. compared to our opposition firms, which tend to, the big corporate firms, which tend to turn staff over very frequently and have that corporate structures of people trying to climb the ladder. We don't tend to get that in the franchises because you tend to keep a family together rather than a corporation together. So it's a very different way of living. You're working with people who you're working to put food on the table for lots and lots of people within the business, not just yourself, and we're one big family. So it works really, really well.
And you've impacted the region where you grew up and that you love and you're connected to with your body and soul. And, you've got your 3 boys that you're raising in the area as well. And as you say, you've gone and recruited people into your organisation that you're helping put food on their table. Growing to 38 folk over that journey is a significant growth. I know that you've also partnered with other PRPs around the country, including in Tasmania, to be able to deliver your team's expertise that you've developed over time into another state where it wasn't present, so that you could actually serve an even broader community, which is a bit of innovation in a franchise space to be able to do that and look at how you can partner and work in other areas of the country where there might be gaps. And again, that's that bigger picture that you're able to see. Even winding back to that early comment that you sort of said off the cuff about where there's a marketplace and there's one, there has to be two. And what folk might not realise, you were really young. You had just been doing your marketing degree at that stage, but you picked up on a concept like that, and you had the wisdom in your conversations with your dad and the other folk retiring from the industry to say, hey, that equals opportunity when it's going back to one. Can you tell us a little bit more about that young Gareth? Like that?
I guess I'm very lucky. I like to think I'm an okay value, but a really good marketer in some respects. And in that, I did really enjoy the marketing course, but one of the things I decided very early is I wanted to sell myself and sell my own skills rather than sell someone else's product and promise something that someone else was up to someone else to deliver. If it's yourself, you deliver yourself, and you always can be proud of that product, right? So that was the philosophy that if you come down and start up a valuation firm, a service provision business, you are selling yourself, and to recognise where there's opportunities. I mean, I don't think there's anybody I know that started a franchise or a valuation firm at my age. No one ever did, and they still don't. And now it's even harder now to do so. I was very, very lucky that I probably was able to do it very early. And our CEO, Greg Sugars, we had this discussion the other day, and when we were talking about our age and how much we've learnt and grown, and he was just saying, he was saying to me, basically, I'm 10 or 15 years in front of my peers because I started so early. People in their 40s in our industry are now looking at trying to buy into valuation businesses or to be part of, valuation businesses in their 40s. And here I am in my, early 40s, and I've been doing it for 18 years or 20 years. So I did get started early. It meant that you just had to learn on your feet and all that sort of stuff. But in marketing, they did teach that concept where there's one, there's always two. There's always a market leader and a market follower. The market leader in this case was Optian down here. They had a huge office down here. They had, I think, about 80 to 100 staff. Right. They had their central core, calling people from here. So their national call centre was in Geelong. Plus they had a very good group of senior valuers that were coming through that were the bee's knees in Geelong. They were the guys to go to, and they had another really core of guys coming up under that, which was their future. And they corporatised. They joined with a national firm and became a national business. And in so doing, they put a bit of a glass ceiling over a lot of that second tier guys coming through who've decided that they just didn't think there was any future for them in that business, and they left. Some of them, most of them, come work for me. And the guys that were at the very top, they took the opportunity to cash out or slow down, and that meant that all of a sudden all that experience and expertise that was led by this one firm evaporated fairly quickly. And I guess I was the Stephen Bradbury skating along and just picking up the clients. That firm, Optian, still exists in Geelong. I've got a lot of respect for them as a firm, but they're a corporate firm, so they're very different. Yes. They've got a lot less value. I think we've got a lot more values than they do now. I think they would have 6 to 10, I think, through the region.
Yes.
I can't be 100% sure on that, and we've got 38. So, so we've, in some respects, they've moved their call centre out of Geelong. They've downsized their business. They've gone to a corporate structure. There's big changes within them. We've been able to remain consistent. We've been able to keep the relationships, which is really important. We've been able to keep the same people working in the same jobs for most of that time. So the relationships that they're growing over time in regional areas, that's so important.
Yes.
Those relationships, and the banks have relationships here. We have relationships with them. They bring us clients. But it's when you see, even when you're looking from the outside at the banking world, as they change staff in their corporate structures, you can see how much traction they lose in the regional areas every time they, someone leaves or they hire or fire or change their team. Relationships out here is just the only way. It's the soul of how business operates.
Now, Gareth, people probably understand when it comes to property, there's real estate agents, there's banks or financial institutions, but there's also valuers. They might not actually understand what valuers do. How would you explain that?
I guess we're a bit of the dream crushers or the gatekeepers, either way you want to look at it. So obviously, as valuers, we're here to provide a professional opinion of value that someone who's setting a mortgage or make a decision for a legal decision or anything like that, a financial decision, they can rest upon that professional advice, which is vastly different than a real estate agent. It's become a valuer takes you 6 years. It's an extensive process to become a valuer. The training is very high. We have very high expectations within the industry of what we can produce. I can't just, for example, tell you a value over the phone or send you a one-page letter. Any sort of advice I provide has got to be backed up with evidence. It's got to be done in a certain way. It's got to follow certain guidelines and standards and legal cases. So a valuer provides that really high-level professional advice. I guess if you'd like to compare it, it's like going to a bookkeeper and asking them for high-level accounting advice. It's just, you're not going to get that advice. So when you go it's the same with the real estate agent. There's very good real estate agents around Geelong, and they may know the value of things in their area and their expertise, but they don't necessarily have the skill set to communicate that with the professional underlying evidence and all that sort of stuff that we're able to provide.
Yeah, and there's very clear guidelines that you have to adhere to from the Valuer General's Office, which is a legal entity for the government here, that you have to tick every single box to make sure that you're just not making numbers up.
It's not just for the Valuer General's Office, it's for any of the panels we're on. The Valuer Generals have a very strict panel, but also all the banks have their own panels as well. And to be appointed to those panels, they're personal appointments, not to a firm or to a name or to a brand. You have to have met their criteria, be a person of upstanding in the community, someone who they can rely on for that advice, but also who someone's got the right experience and who can, in some respects, lives and breathes it. You're their eyes and ears on the ground, and they put a lot of rigour and a lot of legal around that. And that means that we're also under the pressure to perform, that we need to get it right, and that we can be sued. Can't. When you go to get the advice off a real estate agent, they can give you advice freely, just like anybody in the street can. If you go and rely on that advice and lose money, and that you've got no recourse. With a valuer, if I provide professional advice, I'm like getting it off your doctor. If your doctor is negligent in how he provides you that advice and doesn't look at all of the evidence in front of him and provides you the wrong diagnosis, you can sue your doctor. Well, that's the same way with valuers. If we are negligent in any way, you can sue us for our advice if you've made a loss. And for a period of time there, through the bad 80s and 90s, valuers were the highest sued profession in the country. So luckily these days that's slowed down, and we've got some very rigorous terms of engagements about how we operate. But valuers are the last person sometimes holding the can when everything goes south. Our professional indemnity that sits behind us is the last thing that's got any money attached to it that banks and solicitors and other people will come after. So they'll try and sue us to meet the shortfall. An example is if, for example, you value a property, I might have been negligent in that I might have not viewed all the sales evidence correctly, or analysed something differently, or ignored some advice that was provided to me, and provided a value to someone who's lent money on that, like a bank. They've lent money on that based on my advice, and then that property might fall over, and then the person who owns it would be sued and have nothing left, and the bank would then, the mortgagee would then come after me and my professional indemnity to make up the shortfall of what they lost. So when you're doing hundreds of valuations a year, that's a lot of ticking time bombs.
Yes, yeah. So that's why you got to do it correctly. And
Yep.
Yes for Success: How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment is my new book. It's out now. Check out the link in the show notes for all the details of how to get the new book, Yes for Success: How to Achieve Life Harmony and Fulfillment. It's going to teach you a whole heap of strategies around how to have increased happiness now and into the future for your life. If not for you, get it for someone else that might be struggling or floating along in life. This book works. And as you can see, folks, the book debuted at number 6 on Amazon. So people have reacted to it very positively. Check it out. You can get your copy too. Now let's get back to the interview with Gareth. One of the things that I've learned in working with you and your team is that the passion for being involved with property is very high. A lot of the team had looked at real estate at a point in time and realised actually valuation was more aligned to what they want to do because of the authenticity behind it. That was a really strong pattern that your team members shared with me about their own journeys as to how they got into be a valuer, because it's not something that necessarily people even know exists until they start looking, if that makes sense.
I like to explain it that a valuer, a real estate agent is a professional at marketing a property on its best day and trying to get a whole lot of people to come and compete to buy that property. That's their expertise in marketing the property, but they don't. But what a valuer's expertise is, we don't sell or buy property. We're independent, and our expertise is analysing why that value is worth what it's worth, and what the current market value of that can be. And that can be tricky, because the current market means there has to be a market. And sometimes you might have someone who goes along to an auction and puts their hand up, and the good old auctioneer keeps taking those bids off the garden fence behind them, and that they run that price up. And just because that person was prepared to pay that amount for that property, does that make it a market? And should someone like a bank rest a mortgage upon what that person has paid, even though they paid 30, 40, 50, 100 grand over what the next best person was going to pay? So that's where a valuer comes in. We would assess it at what the current market is, what the whole market would pay, not just that person who's willing to pay a whole lot more for it. So, and sometimes that can be a heartache to people who go to an auction and pay too much and then find that they have to actually find that extra 100K themselves because the bank's not going to lend it to them. Yes,
of course. These are factors that are really important for people to consider. And Gareth, you mentioned earlier that part of your business is being an upstanding citizen, and I colloquially call you Mr. Geelong because you know everybody down, not only in Geelong, but in the whole southwestern region of Victoria. But part of that and part of you being an upstanding citizen is the charity that you're involved with. Would you like to share some information about that charity, please?
I'd love to, yeah. Like, I'm the chair of Lazarus Community Centre. We're a homeless drop-in centre in Geelong. We feed about 55 to 60 people a day. That includes, they come into our centre. They don't have to come to the centre. It's not a prescribed thing or prescription thing. They don't have to come there to get a dole payment or anything like that. They come because it's a nice, comfortable place where they can seek shelter and they can seek some respite. And they come in voluntarily. We sign them in, collect some information, but other than that, they can come in and be at peace a little bit, away from being on the street and having people have cracks at them and things like that. So they can come and have a meal, they can get a change of clothes, they can have a shower, they can get some toiletries, some clothing, they can have some recreation time, have a nap, and then get back out into the world where they need to go, because a lot of these people don't have a home to go to at night time and have some respite. They are out on the street at night time. They're never really sleeping at night time. They're always one eye open. Even if they're lying on the street, they're not really sleeping on the street. They're there with one eye open because it's dangerous. And they need to know what's going on around them, and they're sort of semi-awake the whole time. So these people are exhausted, worn out people that are there for sometimes not a reason that they have control of. A lot of people think that homeless people and people in disadvantage have done something wrong in life and made a wrong choice or have taken the wrong turn, and that doesn't necessarily have to be the case.
No.
We've got lots and lots of people coming through our centre, and one of the stories of one of the people was like literally she had to stop work to look after her mum, but and my mum was dying of cancer, but she just didn't realise that her mum's rent was so high, and then when her mum died, the people that own the property pulled the property straight from under her with no notice because her mum's name was on the lease, and she ended up, a good, solid, smart person ended up out in the street really, really quickly with nowhere to go. And at that time, finding a job in the middle of COVID was really hard. And that lady had nowhere to go. She was able to come to Lazarus, get some sort of respite. She was living in her car, but she came to Lazarus during the day, got the respite, allowed to get clean clothes, all that sort of thing. And then within a short period of time, we were able to introduce her into some of the other organisations that come into Lazarus to meet these people, the referral organisations, such as Nehemiah, Salvation Army, St Vincent's, all these guys that have housing options available to them. And they're able to create social files and find homes and find homes for these people. And she was able to get a home through that connection. So Lazarus provides a connection for people with social isolation and homelessness who can come in, get some respite, and create some relationships, and we're able to then introduce them into the places they need to be. It's the coalface of the issue in Geelong, and we're able to do that, and it's completely self-funded. We fund it through philanthropy from Geelong. We don't get any government assistance. It's literally just me and a few other people on the phone all the time ringing up businesses asking for money, and doing lunches and getting donations. And we've got some great. Geelong is really, really, really philanthropic community and really tight community. If you're part of the community, it gets behind you. It's such a great town to be part of. I can't. When I was in Melbourne, when I lived in Melbourne, I never really heard about these organisations that the way that they do here. Here, it's if you're in business here, there's just an expectation that you will be involved in one of these charities, that you will be on the board, that your business will contribute. And if you want to be part of the village that is Geelong and do business in Geelong, that's just an expectation. And you don't survive long if you don't get involved, because you don't create the relationships that are required to run your business unless you're involved. Geelong's a village, and that's how it has always been and hopefully always stays.
I think everyone listening or watching can hear your passion for PRP. They can hear your passion for valuation. They can hear your passion for Geelong and the region. And it's not just Geelong again. It's all the way through.
No, we do it in Warrnambool as well, yeah.
Yeah. And it's also your passion for Lazarus. And we'll definitely put in the show notes a link for anyone that wants to contribute and help. As you said, it's only funded through philanthropy. It's not funded through any government. And it's making a difference to people's lives, like the example that you shared. Now, everything you've just discussed, we didn't use the word leadership, Gareth, but it is a leadership. What are some of your, maybe your top 3 perspectives on leadership and being the leader that you've become throughout your journey?
I think when you're good, kind enough to give me a few dot points of what some of these questions would be, guys. So I did, write a few things down. But when I was sitting there thinking about it, what makes me, what's my strength in leadership? I think it has to be empathy. And the ability to communicate empathy. And I think too many businesses have come and gone in Geelong as competitors to mine, and they've disappeared and not survived and not created and not been able to get off the ground because they don't have a team of people who are there with a single mission, single goal, and as a collective group, that are there with empathy between each other, with close relationships, that just like a family. So just like a family, we have tiffs, we have ups and downs. But there's a few little key points along the way that you learn as well. You've also got to make sure that you have the right apples in the barrel. And I've made mistakes. You can recruit people who don't meet those what's the word I'm looking for?
Standards.
Those standards. You can recruit people that don't live by those missions, and sometimes you can try and convert them into something else and bring them along, and sometimes you just can't. And when you can't, you have to be able to cut them out of the barrel pretty quickly. So you've got to, as a leader, you've got to be able to stand back and realise who's not living by the mission, who isn't. So when you promote the wrong person, your good people leave. And that was really, really eye-opener for me. I was very lucky that those people hadn't quite left, and I was able to talk to them, and they all came to me afterwards and said, thank God you got rid of him, because we were literally looking for other jobs. We had resumes out, we were looking for other jobs, and they were people that have been with me for 15, 20 years. So you can promote the wrong people with the wrong culture, and that can impact the rest of the barrel really quickly.
And what you're highlighting there is that leadership's an ongoing journey around learning, and you've been in business a long time. Hiring's always a tricky thing. As you said, you still invest and help people to work on what your culture is, because one of the things we both know, unless you're deliberate about your culture, you'll get whatever your culture you get, and that might not be the one that you want. So you've got to put work and effort into it. When you've got empathy with people, you understand their differences as you've described, Gareth, and you do everything you can. And sometimes, you know, for folk listening, it's not that someone's a bad person or someone else is a good person. It's about fit, and it's about cultural fit. And you know, in organisations to be successful, we've got to have the courage to be able to identify where we're fitting culturally and where we're not.
And so you've got to be really careful. And, you know, it doesn't come down to personality of, you know, how much you like them. It comes down to, do they fit those goals? Are their direction that they're going, is that where the rest of everybody else wants to go? It was about us all, you know, working in a business that we enjoy, doing what we enjoy day to day, and hopefully making enough that we can all put enough food on the table for everyone. You know, you're always learning as a leader. You can never, you got to, your relationships and your empathy with your staff are as important as they are with your customers. And you've always got to keep your eyes open and keep learning. And I don't think you can ever stop learning, to be honest. Every day's different.
Yeah, in terms of learning, the region's been a very strong growth region in terms of people from not only within the state of Victoria, but around Australia moving into the region. And you have a YouTube show called Propped by the Bar. I want to share a little bit about what Propped by the Bar is about and what people can find out if they tune into that show. Yeah,
look, everybody will be welcome to tune in. It is very Geelong centric, I guess. As a show, it's tailored for people in Geelong, but deliberately so. When it started as me and a very good friend of mine and colleague, Michael DiStefano, who runs one of the large real estate firms, and he bought and took over that firm at a similar time that I started here. So we're for a similar age, and we've had the journey together in the same property industry. Him as an agent, me as a valuer, and we've been able to bounce off each other. We don't always agree on everything, but we both like a wine and a good chat, and we love talking about property. So over COVID, we found I used to do a lot of getting out in front of my clients. I do enjoy getting out, doing talks, live talks, and talking to people about property and talking about where it's going and some of the issues in the marketplace. I couldn't do that over COVID. You couldn't get out and see your clients. And I was sitting there talking to Mike and going, you know, we need to market, like the world's about to end. That whenever I feel like that there's a change in the economic circumstances, what's going on from a macro point of view, I feel it's the time to get out and really push your brand and market and get out there in front of your clients. And just over COVID, you're really restricting what you could do. Mm-hmm. And so I said to Mike, why don't we just stick a camera in front of us and talk about property and talk about what's going on and put it out there on YouTube and try and, you know, use both our networks together. So we sort of collaborated together using both our networks. His network as buyers and sellers is very different from my network with banks and accountants and legal. So we're able to, you know, we put it out there to both our networks. We got both our marketing girls together in a room and made them, you know, push it out together and collaborate together, and they've become good friends. So we basically just put a camera in front of us and started talking, and talking about markets, and we broke the thing down into a few different segments of the show, and then we started bringing in other people started ringing us up requesting to come on to talk about different things, and we also wanted to interview people that interested us about what was going on with their lives and interesting people for Geelong. So the core concept was always to keep it very Geelong centric. So we interviewed like the CEO of Avalon Airports and introducing government officials and town councillors and planners that are at the forefront of what's happening in the policy changes and new planning regulations, and you know, really talking to these people that the impact the future of the market, and we're able to give some insight or big significant events that have happened, including some of the biggest developers like Shane Quinn from Quintessential, who's literally changed the landscape of Geelong. I think he's onto his 4th or 5th tower, and he's an incredible story for Geelong just himself. So talking to some of these people who are hugely successful, and finding a little bit about them and why they got to it as well, just like you are with me, but also what that brings to Geelong and what their opinion of the Geelong landscape looks like, and hopefully giving some insight to the viewers of where they should invest or what they should look at doing with their property portfolios and changing their ideas a little bit.
I know I've learned, I don't live in the region, but I've learned a heap about the region as a result of the show, and it's always very insightful. And as you say, you're getting some absolute top guests on your show that are really discussing some big issues. And so if we're looking forward from a vision point of view for the region, what's the future saying to you at the moment?
Oh, look, I think that the region's going to keep growing. It has to keep growing. It'll if you look at a sister city, Newcastle, it has to come and follow in the footsteps of Sydney. To Newcastle as it is to Sydney. Geelong has to be that to Melbourne. I think Newcastle's 1.7, nearly 2 million people in people. Geelong is only 270,000 in people. The prediction is that we'll be at 350,000, by 2050, which it really isn't that far away. And faster even still. So I think they said actually close to 500,000 people by that stage. So you're talking at the town doubling, expanding its size within a 10-year period. If you just go back to what the housing statement that Daniel Andrews released last week, and he was talking about regional areas growing at 16,000 houses per annum over the next 10 years. That's huge amounts. That's the area of Geelong and Ballarat together. So the growth will have a big impact on how people live, trade, and work in Geelong, and it should drive value, should drive properties, should create opportunities. So I think Geelong's, it's just well located, just so well located. There's too many good things going on. I think the biggest thing that people don't talk about is the Land 400 project. That investment to create a new defence industry at Avalon will have flow-on effects into the Geelong industrial precincts. It'll drive industrial values. It'll create jobs, hundreds and hundreds of jobs, and not just that are going to work in the project itself, but all the suppliers and the downstream jobs that will come with that. It's a bit like creating the car industry from scratch that we used to have here and replacing it. And so it's absolutely enormous. And we haven't even seen the start of that yet because they're still building the factories. There's talk that they're building the 123 tanks for Australian Army, but there's talk that there'll be hundreds of other tanks, sold to external armies and overseas armies, and this hub in Avalon could become the logistical and production facility for half of Asia for their defence industries, which is an amazing thing. It'll be great for this community as well. So if you've got jobs, you've got prosperity. If you've got growth, you've got prosperity. So I think Geelong's in for a really good ride still, to be honest.
And that's what's exciting. I mean, everything just continues to point from the information I've been learning from you about the region's going to keep growing. It's an exciting place to be. People will keep moving there. There will be developments. Obviously, infrastructure's got to continue to grow and develop with it as well. But as you say, with the Land 400 project is really exciting for the region. And as you say, they're just starting that now, but that means it's going to be the catalyst for growth. Considerable growth over the next 10 years, that's for sure.
10, 20, 30 years, it's going to keep growing and growing, When you've got a business as big as Hanwha putting that sort of money and the government putting billions of dollars in, there's only really one way it can go, and it's enormous. And then you've got all the infrastructure that they're talking about Geelong with the conference centre and the other things that are happening. There's quite a lot going on, really, if you break it all down.
Oh, yeah. And of course, people do need to understand that if they do choose to move to the region, if they have grown up in other places of Australia and follow the AFL, they do have to sacrifice whatever other team they barrack for and move themselves to the Geelong Cats. People don't understand. It's an unwritten law for the region. Is that correct?
Yeah, look, you have to hand back your keys after 12 months if you haven't joined the footy club, and you may as well leave town. We don't. It's not strictly rule. I remember when the Cats played Hawthorn in a grand final, and there was one person on a horse with a Hawthorn flag that rode through the middle of town of Geelong, and I don't think he got from one end to the other without being litres of rubbish thrown at him. we love our footy. The greatest thing is the amount of football teams in Geelong. Just
Yes.
outside the AFL itself, the GDFL. You've got 3 different football leagues. There's a football club, like a large football club within a kilometre of every home. You kids play football in Geelong. It's football,
Yes.
and football. And it's an amazing thing to see every Saturday. These communities getting together to play football, from girls and boys now, all the way
Yes.
up, and the strength and culture that provides through Geelong. It's quite a healthy site, and I think my favourite thing is to sit at the top of the hill and watch the flags come from the side streets whenever Geelong's playing, and you can just see these people walking from everywhere where they've parked or where they lived to walk to Simmons Stadium to watch, or GMHBA now, to watch the game, and they're just coming from everywhere. It's like someone's blown the whistle or banged the drum and the army assembles. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I suspect you might have been Pied Piper out the front there too, blowing a few tunes.
Yep.
Yourself, Gareth. Now, just in case anyone's taking us literally, you don't have to give up your AFL team. If
No,
you
it
want
was
to.
just colloquial.
You don't actually have to do that. But
I
a
might
lot of
egg your
people
house,
do
but, you know.
because a lot of people do because of the community feel around Geelong. We've had our time. What are going to be some of the best ways for people to reach out and connect with you, Gareth?
Look, I'd love people to jump on and watch my YouTube program, Prop by the Bar. I'm there. We do that about once a month. We've got our I write in the Times, the Geelong Times, Bellarine Times, and Surf Coast Times. Every second week, so I've got a regular column in the Times where we put some stuff up that might be of interest to people, and we talk about stuff. And obviously through our website at www.prp.com.au, and that will give you access not just my office but our entire network office. PRP itself has about 35 offices, I think, around Australia and New Zealand, and over 300 staff. So we can provide property valuation advice and services and advisory services to anywhere in Australia through our network. And it's because it's a franchise network, the people working in it aren't transitional. They've been in there working in those regions for long periods like me. They own their own businesses. They've got a stake in the ground, and we love what we do. And, so please, if you need that sort of advice, we're here for you.
And of course, people can connect with you via LinkedIn as well, or follow you at least on
LinkedIn,
that.
Facebook, and all the other social medias. There's Instagram and this and that, and I can't even keep up.
Gareth, I really appreciate your time and joining us today on the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Okay, folks, once again, this is Gary Ryan, host of the Moving Beyond Being Good podcast. We've had Gareth Kent, the Managing Director of PRP Geelong, Warrnambool and Mt Gambier, join us in an insightful tour of valuation, charities through Lazarus, and understanding the growth of the region in Geelong and the southwest of Victoria, and what's the future looking like for it. So once again, we appreciate Gareth's time, and folks, if you want to please subscribe and like the podcast, please do so on both YouTube and on the podcast, whatever platform you're listening to us. If you'd like to get on our email subscribers list, please go to orgsthatmatter.com/newsletter and you can sign up. Once again, I look forward to joining you on our next episode. Bye.